Welcome back to Podcast Royal. How are you this week, Rachel?
I'm good. It's good to be back with you and good to be back with listeners. So, I was telling Jessica before we started recording that my mic died last week, which, if it's going to die at any time, I guess it should be the week when we're not recording. So, hopefully, my mic sounds good. Jessica, you can be my set of ears if I get feedbacky or whatever. But that Blue Yeti had 3 years worth of, we bought our mics at the same time, you and I, and it had 3 years worth of a good life, but it decided to kick the bucket. So I'm back with a new mic and missed you last week. So much to talk about. How are you? I know you? We were not really off. It's not like we were on a vacation or on a beach somewhere, listeners. We were just at a big work event. So how are you? How was your crazy week?
I'm very good. Yeah, we've been busy at work and busy at home. The kitchen renovation is still underway. I was just telling you, Rachel, before we started recording, it's a lot of hurry up and wait during these home
Mm-hmm.
projects. A lot of, on the front end, scheduling things and lining everything up. And then at the end, it seems to go pretty fast. So hopefully I'm in the home stretch here and in the next month or so, we'll wrap everything up.
Well, like I told you a minute ago, I know you're going to be really glad to have your kitchen back. So, if my kitchen was torn up, I probably wouldn't miss it, but you do. So, God bless you. But yeah, we've got. I mean, gosh, take a week off and so much to talk about. So we've got a mighty full episode today.
Yes. And I was just thinking last time we recorded, we were talking about how this upcoming summer season was just so full of events where we can expect to see a lot of royals. And, we've already kind of entered that season now and we're learning of some. So, one thing that I actually saw just recently, Mike and Zara Tindall attended a celebrity golf classic last week. I don't know if you saw that, but we got
Mm-hmm.
the cutest photo of them. They were matching in this like a hot pink golf outfit kind of ensemble that they were wearing. I loved that photo. And then
Mm-hmm.
we also had some interesting news, and I just thought I'd mention this before we actually jump into the royal rundown, because it hasn't happened yet. But we heard that King Charles has invited Lady Gabriella Windsor to attend Trooping the Color this year, which we know is
Mm.
in June. And I know listeners remember, a few months ago, sadly, we learned of her husband's passing, and May 18th would have been their fifth wedding anniversary.
Mm.
So, an invitation to Trooping the Color, I mean, it could mean a balcony appearance for her, but we'll have to wait and see if she attends and to what extent. All of the details of that is not confirmed. But I don't know about you, Rachel. With the Royals being, pretty slim right now and in the working capacity, especially this year, I would really love to see her on the balcony with the king and queen.
I would love that too. And I knew that anniversary was coming up, and so it happened since we last recorded, and I think that's absolutely lovely. I mean, the late Queen Elizabeth loved Gabriella, and so it sounds like she's just really beloved in the family. And what a wonderful, gracious invitation for the king to extend to her to Trooping the Color. I'd love to bring her on the balcony. The balcony is so slim these days. I mean, we've seen it at recent Trooping the Colors. There's plenty of room for her, so bring her on. That's what I say.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And I love her. And I mean, this month must have been just this whole year must have been extraordinarily difficult for her. So I actually think about her quite often. And so I'm really happy to hear that she's going to get to be at Trooping the Color, and that the king will be at Trooping the Color too, which we were unsure about for a while. So, well, shall we get into the royal rundown, as we do have so much to talk about?
Yes, let's go ahead and jump in.
So, listeners, it has been obviously 2 weeks since you've heard from us. So, we're going to go all the way back to May 8th, kind of where we left off the story. So, I remember talking with you, Jessica, in the last episode, very hopeful, very naive, obviously, that maybe some royal family member, Edo, anybody, Bueller would show up to Harry's, I almost said Harry's event at St. Paul's for the Invictus Games on May 8th. Nobody did. Instead, they went to the garden party, but I'm going to pause myself for just a second because so much has happened since our last episode. If we went into everything, brick by brick, we would be here forever. So, and I guess that's what happens when we take a week off. So I'm just going to gloss over some things just to make mention of them before we get into Harry and the Invictus Games event on May 8th. So we had Zara Tindall's 43rd birthday happened. We had Harry and Meghan's 6th wedding anniversary. King Charles held an investiture. The Archibald, this was a weird story. The Archibald Foundation was apparently declared delinquent by the California Attorney General because of a check that was lost in the mail, but this has apparently been resolved. That was strange. That was right on the heels of the Nigeria trip, which we'll talk about. King Charles is apparently worth a staggering $770 million, Jessica, which is significantly more than his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth. That's a lot of money. And most of that's thanks to the Duchy of Cornwall. We have the Chelsea Flower Show that's kicked off. I know Camilla said yesterday that she loves Bridgerton and she's caught up. That's fun. Camilla, speaking of Camilla, she has vowed to no longer wear real fur, according to PETA. So all of this happened since we've been away. It's so much to say, it's difficult to know where to start. But I guess the natural place to start is chronologically. So on May 8th, King Charles held the first Buckingham Palace garden party of the season. It was at the exact same time as Prince Harry's Invictus Games ceremony at St. Paul's Cathedral. So, look, we could be here all night with the endless headlines and gossip. I don't have to tell you, Jessica, or you listeners about those headlines, but what we do know is this. Let's stick to the facts that no members of the royal family showed up to Harry's event. Although, and this actually brought a tear to my eye when I saw this, Princess Diana's siblings were there. So at least Harry had some family in attendance because, of course, Meghan was in California at the time. So, meanwhile, about 2, 3 ish miles away, at Buckingham Palace, King Charles, Queen Camilla, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, of course, that's Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, all were at the garden party. So Kate, as we know, is off public duty. William had an investiture that day. Again, the headlines are endless and rampant. So I'm just going to ask you this, Jessica. Do you think that Charles not being able to see Harry on this trip is a step backwards in the relationship between Harry and the rest of the royal family?
Well, I don't know if them not being able to connect this time is a step back, but I do think it's pretty telling as to the state of their relationship. I think to the public, it might feel like a step back, but we really just don't know how things have been behind closed doors. So the state of their relationship could have been like this for a long time. But I do want to call something out here. You mentioned how the headlines about King Charles and Harry's misconnection have been rampant. I actually found it really odd that Harry's team released a statement informing the public that he could not meet with his father. So if you read the statement, it doesn't actually address the Invictus Games event at all. It wasn't really specifically saying he couldn't attend that. It seemed to just focus on a general, perhaps private meeting between the two of them. So the statement, I'll read really quickly. It says, in response to the many inquiries and continued speculation over whether or not the Duke will meet with his father while in the UK this week, it unfortunately will not be possible due to His Majesty's full program. The Duke, of course, is understanding of his father's diary of commitments and various other priorities and hopes to see him soon. So I understand the public fascination with all of this because so much of the family drama has been on display. And I do think it's human nature to be curious. The public really is sort of invested in this like it's some kind of a
Oh,
reality TV
yeah,
show.
for sure.
But in actual reality, the family does not owe the public a statement on their personal relationship. I could see them addressing the King's attendance at the public Invictus Games event, but I think focusing on them meeting in general feels unnecessary to me. And I wonder if they could have avoided some of the headlines by just not addressing it at all. I kind of think of, never explain, never complain. And I think the public would have speculated briefly, then accepted that we just don't know what occurred behind closed doors and everyone would have moved on. And I think it would have allowed for more focus on the Invictus Games and their travel rather than, causing conversations about relationships within the family. I just don't feel like that statement benefited anyone. And I do think it was a mistake on Harry's PR team. And going back to the headlines, there were reports that King Charles declined to meet, but there were also reports that Harry didn't actually request a meeting. And I just think it left the public continuing to speculate rather than putting speculation to rest. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I just think it's really sad all the way around, to be honest with you. I think if I were to, no pun intended, speculate, I think that Harry's PR team put that statement out so that the media would not speculate whether there was going to be a meeting, because I mean I cover this, and so like I know that there was a lot of buzz like yes they're meeting, no they're not. And so I think that if again, if I were a betting woman, I would say that Harry's PR team did this so that they could just nip it in the bud and say this is what's happening. I thought the statement was pretty gracious. I think the whole thing is just incredibly sad. And you know, I guess to a lay person like myself, I'm like, you can't spare 30 minutes for your son. But then I also remember that this is a different world that we're in with the royals, right? Where duty does come first. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it just is, you know? And when it comes to all of the back and forth, which just is pointless to get into because we don't know, I think that old phrase, there's his side, her side, and the truth. Have you ever heard that phrase? It's in
Yeah,
this case, it would be
I have.
his side, and the truth. But you know, where there's Harry's side, there's Charles's side, but then the truth is probably somewhere in between. And I just think the whole thing is so sad. It's such a waste of life. I mean, if anybody has lost anybody, you understand how fragile life is, and not to get like too deep and esoteric, but life's too short, and Charles has cancer, and I pray that he's doing well, and obviously is because he's back to public facing duty. But it just I can completely understand. I get both sides. From the outside looking in, it looks ridiculous, to be honest with you, that a father can't spare 30 minutes for his son. But also knowing the royal family as I do, I also get it that it's just his schedule is so packed. So there's just no right or wrong answer. It's just sad
Yeah.
is my
Yeah,
bottom line.
and I think my comments on this too, I just wanted to reiterate, are less speculative about the relationship between Charles and Harry and more so about the decision of Harry's PR team and kind of
Yeah.
where that came from. To your point, maybe they thought that that would put speculation to rest, but I just feel like from a PR perspective, I don't know, I felt like it kind of took the focus away from some of the other stuff going on that should have been
Mhm.
highlighted.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to make mention again how glad I am that Harry did have the Spencers there, because he had no Meghan, he had no royal family members, and I'm just glad he had family there. And I think that as complicated as we know that this is, I think it's even more complicated than we even realize. So it's and then let's add another, why don't we just add another layer to the complication? So William got this military appointment that was at one point intended for Harry. And so let's talk about this. So it probably felt a bit like rubbing salt in the wound that the same day that it was announced that the king wouldn't be able to make time in his diary for Harry while Harry was in the UK, William was named Colonel in Chief of the Army Air Corps, which is the regiment that Harry served in during his 10 years in the British Army. So that appointment was officially conferred on William on May 13th, which was during, and also, this is an aside, there's so much news these past 2 weeks that we're just trying to sneak the news items in where we can. But in that same visit, the king revealed that he had also lost his sense of taste during cancer treatment. He disclosed that during a conversation with a veteran who had also undergone cancer treatment. But back to what I was saying, the big rub here for Harry about this appointment is, had Harry stayed on as a working member of the royal family and not stepped back 4 years ago, this appointment was likely going to go to him. And I know it meant something to him. So the fact of the matter is that Harry is not a working royal anymore. He hasn't been for over 4 years. And I think it was Tom Quinn, who we've had on the show before, who said kind of a poignant quote when he said, of when Harry left the firm, you don't just escape the things you hated doing as a working royal, you also lose the things you love. So it kind of cuts both ways. I think the worst part here was the timing, and how this news about, and I don't think that that was planned like as a jab or a dig or whatever. I really don't. But that news about William's appointment came at pretty much the exact same time that Harry was told that his father wouldn't have time to meet with him. The rift has been so felt that since we recorded last, even the Archbishop of Canterbury asked the public to pray for the royal family. That's how heated it was that week of May 8th. So, do you think that it was an intentional snub that the king conferred this appointment on William. This, and because it was, let me rephrase, it was conferred on May 13th, but the announcement was made that it was going to be conferred on the same day, the week prior, that Harry learned that Charles wouldn't have time for him. So do you think that that was an intentional snub, or was it just a bad coincidence?
Given what we do know about King Charles, if you recall, I think this has been brought up several times. He wants peace for his family. I mean, this is a man who walked Meghan down the aisle at her wedding to Harry. He's begged his sons to get along and let him enjoy being a father and grandfather. He's been willing to meet with Harry in the past. And I don't doubt that he's been hurt by all of this. But I think he does truly want a good relationship with both of his sons. And you're right, the timing of this was really unfortunate for Harry, but I think he knew that this would happen eventually. And the quote that you shared by Tom Quinn is so powerful and true. And it's a little bit like the saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah,
You can't live life as a private citizen in another country and also hold these roles and titles that come with being a working royal serving the monarchy. So I really do hate it for Harry. I know that there are some areas like this that he is so genuinely passionate about, and they're a big part of his identity. And I think if he had stayed on as a working royal, he would have done a wonderful job in that role. I just, I don't want to call it a snub. I really feel like it may have just been unfortunate timing.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And then so on the heels of all of this, that week, Harry and Meghan went to Nigeria. So they actually flew out to Nigeria together. I didn't know what I thought. I like if Meg, because obviously Meghan wasn't in the UK for, well, she was for like a half second, but she wasn't with Harry for the Invictus Games event. They actually met up at Heathrow in the Windsor suite. Remember us talking about that on the show? Like I
Yep.
think it's like $3,000. Like we went deep dive into that forever ago, who knows when. But she flew to London, and then the two of them flew together to Nigeria. So speaking of Windsor, we're going to talk Meghan's fashion for a minute. And I don't want to negate the trip, which was full of meaningful engagements. It very much felt like a royal tour. We'll talk about that in a second. But I want to talk about Meghan's fashion for a second. I want to specifically point out this peach maxi dress that she wore on Friday, which was their first day in Nigeria. And listeners, I'm sure that you can see this dress in your mind. I didn't know until a couple of days later that that dress was actually in the Windsor style. So it was called the Windsor dress. So I think that's interesting. Was that a coincidence, do you think, or was that intentional?
Well, it's definitely not a coincidence. And we were just talking of snubs. Speaking of snubs, there were also some headlines that this dress choice might have been a snub to the royals. And I actually don't agree with that either. I feel like most people miss the hidden message here. We always talk about messages they send with their clothing and their fashion. And I feel like to me, it was more of a nod to her and Harry's love story. So, from what I found online, the dress was actually from the brand's 2018 collection. And the obvious connection here to me is that Harry and Meghan got married in 2018
Hmm.
in Windsor at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle to be exact. So, I believe that was the intended message with the dress. I could be wrong. I have not seen that reported anywhere, but that was my takeaway. And it feels really obvious. So I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, I knew obviously about the Windsor style, but I didn't know about the 2018 connection. That's
Yeah.
actually really cute. And it was the week before their wedding anniversary. So that was probably top of mind for them. Okay, that, I mean, no, I do not think that it was like a diss of any kind to the Windsors. If anything, I think it was like paying homage, but like that, what you just said makes total sense. I think that's cute. I don't think it's an insult at all. Plus, the outfit's cute anyway. So, God, that you are the first. You're a great reporter because you're the first person. Like, it's been what, almost 2 weeks since that happened. That's the first time I've ever heard about that. That's awesome. So again, not to negate the powerful work on mental health, just obviously with veterans that they did while in Nigeria. It was a really powerful visit, 3 day visit. There were a ton of fashion moments. We had, like, you guys know the lay of the land, listeners. We have to talk some fashion. Ton of fashion moments from Meghan on this trip. She rarely disappoints me. She and Harry at one point dressed to match the Nigerian flag. She wore a yellow Carolina Herrera dress that she wore for Archie's first birthday. I liked this. She wore a cross necklace that once belonged to Princess Diana. Not to mention the 3 days of engagements where Meghan really embraced her Nigerian heritage. I think we talked in the last episode about how she took a genealogy test recently, or recently being a loose term, like within the last few years, that showed that she is 43% Nigerian. This was her and Harry's first international trip like this since stepping back in 2020. And by the way, Meghan's longtime makeup artist Daniel Martin said that she had no stylist and no glam squad while in Nigeria, so she was doing it all herself. So did it we'll start here. Did it feel like a royal tour to you? And then we'll get into the fashion because I dropped some photos in the Google Doc. But let's start with, did it feel like a royal tour to you?
So to me, a lot of the engagements did seem to mirror what we typically see during a royal tour, but this was not a royal tour. And I do think it's important to make that distinction. Harry and Meghan are private citizens traveling to a country in a business capacity. This trip was not endorsed or affiliated with the royals at all. So I think there were a lot of things about the trip that seem to mirror what we would see on a tour. I don't know, what did you get that same feeling?
I mean, it felt like a royal tour to me. They're not royal anymore. I mean, they are royal by a family affiliation, but they're not working royals, I should say. I think to your point that you made a while ago about American Riviera Orchard, it kind of feels like, and this isn't like, I'm not saying that Harry and Meghan are ripping off the royal family, but they're taking what they know, right, and adopting it in their own life. So, like with the Buckingham Palace shop or whatever, and how they sold jams and things like that. We've talked about that on the show, and how Meghan is adopting that in her style. And now this tour model. I mean, this is what they know. They're not working royals anymore, and so they're taking kind of what they've learned and making it their way. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for sure. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think you're onto something there, and I think specifically with Harry, right? Like this is
This is
the life
all
that
he
he grew
knows.
up
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't know anything different. And I think that probably, whether he realizes it or not, a lot of the way he plans things is inspired by how he grew up and what he knows.
And yeah, I mean, and you can't unlearn what you've learned and what's baked into your brain. And I think and again, I think that there's enough room in this world for two places that sell strawberry jam, for example. And I think there's enough room in this world for two, for the Sussexes and the Royals to, first of all, nobody, I guess the king and queen will go to Australia later this year, but nobody's even going on royal tour. So it's not like they're happening at the same time and they're trying to steal the limelight. I just think that they're taking what they've learned and making it their own. And I don't think that there's a problem with that. But yeah, it definitely for sure felt like the royal tour model to
I
me.
do
Absolutely.
I do think you have to be careful with that though, because when you are traveling and you're sort of presenting as a royal tour and you're going to a Commonwealth country or whatever, I think back to like businesses and how brands have to be really careful to not have their brand altered or changed. And, so the public who maybe aren't as familiar with the separation between working royals and private citizens could easily be, confused by, these different types of trips. So I do think they have to be careful with that and find ways to draw a distinction
Hmm.
from what they do and these projects that they take on and these trips they take, and make sure that it's clear that it's not a royal tour.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be the first of many because Harry spoke, I think it was to People magazine, and said that there's only so much you can do on Zoom and from home, and they want to be boots on the ground. So it sounds like this is the first of more to come, which personally excites me, if for nothing else because of the fashion. So let's talk about that. So I dropped all these photos in here. I think I got all of them. And I'm wondering, and I'll share mine as well, but I'm wondering what your favorites were as far as Megan's fashion.
Yeah, so for me, I think the two fashion wins were the red dress she wore during the panel discussion
Hmm.
and the Nigerian wrap skirt with that white collared shirt. I
Hmm.
believe the red dress was designed by a Nigerian designer, and the wrap skirt was made with traditional Nigerian fabric and was actually given to her as a gift while she was on the trip. So
Hmm.
I thought that those were the two hits, but I'm curious to know what yours were.
I'm not sure that there was a miss for me, honestly. I love seeing Meghan in color because we really, she's spoken out about this herself about how she rarely wore color. She was very muted when she was a working royal. I actually really do love this yellow Carolina Herrera dress. I really like that color. I think it would look terrible on me, but it looks beautiful on her. I agree with you on the red dress. I don't think there was a miss for me, but I actually don't know the design. I actually do love that peach maxi dress in the Windsor style. I have to say, but I don't know the designer, and I apologize for that. But they're at this reception or gala dinner. It's her strapless like evening gown with hair. You see that like right there in the
Mhm.
middle. It's like a white
The white
white.
strapless.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's gorgeous. I mean, I just like she's in it. She's doing all of her own hair, makeup, styling. That's pretty impressive. But I don't think there was a miss for me on this trip. I kind of can't get enough of it. So it's so much fun to see the different looks. And I'm trying to think about the next time we might see something like this. I hope we don't have to wait until the Invictus Games in 2025, but hopefully according to Harry, they're going to have more tours. But I thought it was a huge fashion win pretty much across the board for me. And meanwhile, so I say that people aren't taking royal visits, and then I guess what I meant was William and Kate haven't been on a royal tour since I think the Caribbean in 2022. They were supposed to go, I think, to Italy and Latvia this year, but then of course everything happened with Kate's illness. So, but William was traveling at the same time. He was on a work trip while Harry and Meghan were in Nigeria. So he went on a 2-day visit to Cornwall and what was marked as his first overnight trip since Kate's cancer diagnosis. I think that's a good sign. I think that's good. Like I don't think that he would
Yeah.
be away from her for a night if things weren't progressing. So that's great. And speaking of traveling, the king and queen will travel to Normandy, France to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day on June 6th. That's coming up. That will mark the first overseas trip the king has made since announcing his cancer diagnosis. And as I said a minute ago, I think they're off to Australia later this year. And speaking of the king, oh, buddy, you want to talk about something that's polarizing? I think that now is as good a time as ever to get your thoughts on the king's official portrait, which was released since we last spoke. Before I do that, though, I want to sneak this in here. So, we talked about garden parties a minute ago. So, we had a second garden party today, May 21st, as we're recording. William was the host. And in Kate's absence, obviously, she's still on medical leave. I thought this was cool actually. Four of William's six royal cousins were in attendance.
Yeah.
I know, right? Isn't that cool? Louise and James are probably still too young for this. Louise is in school at the University of St. Andrews, and James is 16. So, but the other four were there: Peter and Zara, and Beatrice and Eugenie, supporting him in a show of solidarity. Mike Tyndall was also there, and then the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester were back for two of two garden parties. So I liked the way that this was phrased. Like we love People Magazine around here. They're such a great royal source. But I read today that this represents a rare outing highlighting the next generation of the royal family, and I thought that was cool. It was really rainy. The women coordinated in pink and white. And I also want to make mention of this, and I want to get your thoughts on all this in a second. But as Kate continues to recover, a major report from her early childhood work was released today. It was a report from the Royal Foundation Business Task Force for Early Childhood. It released a 60-page, that's a whopper, report today called Prioritizing Early Childhood for a Happier, Healthier Society. So it's 60 pages. We're not going to go into all of it, but it does make a strong economic case for prioritizing early childhood in the business community specifically, asserting that a focus on early childhood will result in the creation of a happier, more productive workforce by focusing on the workforce of the future, which of course is today's kids. So the report quantifies for the first time the monetary value of making that kind of a change. $57.2 billion added to the British economy if we focus on the early years. And the report lays out 5 different ways to do that. It's 60 pages, so you can read that if you're interested. But it seems as though Kate was very involved in the report, even though She is not out front in public. She's clearly working from home still. And through all of this, reports are coming out that she continues to wait on the green light from her doctors to return to work whenever that may be. So, okay, before we get into the portrait, which we're going to talk about in a second, did you see the garden party today? And I'm wondering what you thought of all the cousins coming together for William, who would normally be accompanied by Kate.
Yes, I did see the garden party. Great photos, even with the rain. I mean, that's just part of being in England, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I don't know how they do it in the suede high heel pumps in the grass and the rain. But I loved it. I loved the photos. I loved that the cousins were there supporting William in Kate's absence. You know, it just felt good to see everyone there. And
It did.
um, the outfits were great. I loved Princess Beatrice's bright pink dress.
Mm-hmm.
Princess Eugenie had a really pretty headband with flowers on it. Zara looked great. It was fun and exciting to see everyone out and about at the event. I mean, it's kind of like we have these events where we might see one or two at a time, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something like Royal Ascot where we see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them all together is always exciting. So this was a fun surprise.
Well, I thought Zara in particular just looks amazing. And in addition to the umbrella being the hot accessory, I don't know if you caught this, but so Zara, so you talk about having heels in the wet grass in the rain. She had these little stoppers on
Yeah,
her
I did
heels. Did
see
you see
that.
this? So freaking cool. I mean, so smart. And she had the, I mean, she's probably not the first person to do this, but she is one of the first royals I've seen photographed with these on. She had these little stoppers on her heels so that she wouldn't sink into the grass because it was nasty. It looked nasty out, like super rainy, super gross. So I thought that was cool. I thought she looked, I mean, I thought everybody looked good, but I thought she looked amazing. Okay, the one of the more polarizing stories that's come out since we recorded last is the king's official portrait. So this is a very red official portrait. I believe I saw someone on social media say that it looked like the king was in hell, which you like, look, art, that's what the great thing about art is that it's up for interpretation. One person can love it and one person cannot. So this was painted by Jonathan Yeo, and it's the first official portrait since the king's coronation 1 year ago. It was unveiled at Buckingham Palace last week, and it was commissioned as far back as 2020. So it's been in the works for a while. So in the portrait, Charles is in the uniform of the Welsh Guards, which he was made regimental colonel of in 1975, and that appointment has since passed on to William. But the painting came to be after 4 sittings, which began in June 2021 at Highgrove and concluded last November 2023 at Clarence House. So, of course, during that time, a lot has happened, understatement of the year, including the death of Queen Elizabeth and Charles becoming king. So, in between sittings, Yo worked from drawings and photography he took of Charles in his London studio. And in addition to the portrait being very red, listeners, you might have noticed a butterfly in the portrait. That was actually the king's idea to include that. So that I thought that was cool. So the portrait is on display from May 16th to June 14th at Philip Mould Gallery in London. And then afterwards, we'll move to Draper's Hall for display until the end of August. So as I said, the portrait was super polarizing on social media. People have thoughts. So I'm wondering what you thought.
Well, you are correct. It was very red. As
Yeah.
soon as I saw it on social media, my first thought was, oh no, this is going to get a lot of criticism and a lot of snarky comments. And why did they lean so hard into the red?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not a traditional portrait. And I will say, the shade of red is very pretty. I think
Yeah.
the issue is there's just so much of it, it's overpowering.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's obvious the artist is very talented. I liked King Charles' face. I thought his expression was warm, and I really loved the
Yes.
butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a great addition. And
I thought they
I
actually got his face right, which portraits so rarely do.
Yes, and I believe the idea of the butterfly actually came to him as a nod to his love of the environment and spending
Mm-hmm.
time in his gardens. And we know that a butterfly represents metamorphosis and new beginnings. And it also happened to be a monarch butterfly, which is another tie-in with the king.
Mm-hmm.
I only wish that they had considered how that red color might be perceived by the public. I think I would have really, really loved the portrait if it was all done in like a full teal color instead. I think that would be softer than the red, and I think it could still be another nod to the environment. I don't know. For some reason, teal was just sticking out to me as the perfect
Mm-hmm.
color for that.
Mm-hmm.
But while we are on the subject of royal portraits, last week the royal family actually released some never before seen portraits from
Mm-hmm.
decades past. And so one of them included childhood pictures of King Charles and Princess Anne back in 1956. There was another one. It was a group of royal mothers and babies, including Queen Elizabeth in 1964. But the one in particular that really ties in with King Charles' newest portrait is a portrait of Princess Margaret in 1949, and she is wearing a gorgeous white gown, and the lower part of the skirt is covered in sparkling, colorful butterflies.
Yeah.
And I thought it was such a beautiful dress, and so interesting that we had two royal portraits with butterflies released this last week. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts on Charles' picture, but those were my takeaways.
Do you know what? I love that this artist is like really taking it with like in stride. Like he's just like, because the best art at the end of the day, right, is art that gets people talking. Because
Mhm.
you're never gonna have people at like 100% buy-in on anything, right? And so people are gonna love it, people are gonna hate it, but if they're talking about it, then you win, you know? And if that's the case, then victory, right? Because it's certainly been discussed. I think that the artist seems really cool. First of all, he's painted Philip, he's painted Camilla. He knows the royal audience. He was joking around, and he was at the painting unveiling. He was like, "I hope the king likes it because I could be beheaded." I mean, he was just like he was just cool, right? Like I like this guy, and I mean, it's very red, like you said. I think that we could have done without all the red, but as I said, I think it's very difficult to get someone's face correct in a portrait. Like you can kind of get there, but then there's just a little bit off. But I really think that like Charles himself in the portrait, to take away all the red, is very well done. And
Mhm.
I mean, I again, I could do without some of the red, but if the point of art is to spark conversation, then they won. So I just yeah, I just wonder what the king thought when he saw that. Because like what I've never had a portrait painted myself. I wonder what one thinks as they pull that, sheet down and boom, there you are. Like it's just like, oh my God, it's so red. But anyway, yeah, it's certainly red. We'll just say that.
Well, while we're on the subject of art, last time we talked about the York sisters, specifically Princess Beatrice, and we've got a little bit of news about Princess Eugenie this week. So, she is going to be on the big screen. She was recently featured in the National Gallery's exhibition on screen. It's going to be on film, and it premieres in theaters worldwide on June 4th. Eugenie actually works at the London Art Gallery Hauser and Wirth, and she shared the announcement on her Instagram account where she talked about her love of art. In particular, there's one piece that she highlighted. It dates back to 1524, and it's titled Madonna of the Basket by Antonio da Correggio. Did you see that piece on Instagram, Rachel?
Actually did not. So this is news to me. I'll have to check it
Yeah.
out.
Well, I'm sure many people who work in the art and film space were aware of this project, but the announcement was a total surprise for me. I did not know that this was in the works. And something that I just wanted to mention while we're talking about Eugenie, she has to be one of the busiest royals right now. So she is not, I was just sitting here like, what is she doing? Because I see her a lot. She is not officially in a working royal type role. She's not full-time representing the monarchy, but she does work full-time as a director at the Hauser and Wirth Art Gallery, like I mentioned. She serves as patron for several charitable organizations. We see her a lot at events and engagements related to various causes. Of course, she is a wife and mom to two very young children. She's splitting her time between the UK and Portugal because of Jack's career. She's also co-founder of the Anti-Slavery Collective. We see her do a lot of media appearances to promote her work. And then I'm sure she has a full calendar of social obligations that go along with being a royal and high profile individual. So there's all of that, and somehow she has to try to fit in time for family and relaxation. I really don't know how she does it all, but she seems to do it very well. So I just wanted to call that out because I just feel like I've seen her in so many different spaces, and there's just so many different projects that she's been involved in. But
Hmm.
if any of our listeners are looking to see a film in theaters this summer, I say maybe plan a girls' night and go have dinner and then go see exhibition on screen.
Maybe we can do that when I'm back in
Maybe
Birmingham for
so. That would
a
be
weekend or
fun.
something. I know you're about to talk about Beatrice, but all I'm hearing so much buzz is how, with the slim down monarchy being way too slim, that the York sisters might be called in to at least temporarily be working royals. Who knows? But tell me about what's going on with Beatrice.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent they'll be in any official working capacity. But we did see some news, and again, there's no official confirmation on this, but there's been speculation that she may accompany King Charles during some of the
And this is
Japanese.
Beatrice we're talking about, right? Not Eugenie.
Right, Princess Beatrice, right.
Hmm.
That she may accompany King Charles during the Japanese state visit in June. I think that could be really fun to watch if true. A lot like Princess Eugenie, Beatrice is not a full-time working royal. She's got her own career. She works in strategy for Affinity. She also does a lot of charitable work, though, and attends a lot of royal events throughout the year. But a fun fact about Beatrice, so she is a counselor of state, which means if there is ever a period of time when King Charles is unable to undertake official duties, whether it be to illness or travel, she is on the list of counselors of state who could be called upon to act in his absence. And I think that's really interesting, because we've got her here potentially stepping into work alongside him during this event in June when the Japanese royal family visits. So we'll see, what plays out there. But, with the Princess of Wales on extended medical leave, we've got Charles still limited in his ability to participate in some of these events. I think he needs some, additional support from family members. I think seeing Beatrice's relationship to the monarchy really does seem to make her a great candidate to step up and support. I wonder though, Rachel, if we'll see her like next to him, like by his side, accompanying him at some of these engagements, or if they'll split their responsibilities and maybe we'll see her kind of on her own doing some things during the state visit. I really don't know what to expect there. And I only say that because, we really aren't sure what his medical team's advising him now as far as how much he can work, but all seems to be really well if he's got a trip planned to France coming up next month as well.
Yeah, I say give Beatrice her moment to shine. I mean, I know that the York sisters have always been like, we don't want to be working royals, and I get that, but we're in a weird moment right now. Unexpected things have happened this year that no one could have predicted. I read some, or I can't even remember where I read it. Who knows? But I read somewhere that we need, like, look, Sophie brings the glamour, but we need a little bit of glamour now that Kate is not here right now. Like, and Beatrice, we've talked about this, is having a fashion moment, right? Like, she's in her prime. She's beautiful. She's stylish. Give her the floor. Like, let her have
Well,
a moment.
yeah, Beatrice, it seems very sweet to me, and she's very professional, and I think she would do a wonderful job at these engagements.
I say the more York sisters, the better. I truly love Beatrice and Eugenie, and I think that especially Beatrice, because Eugenie, as you just said, is splits her time between the UK and Portugal. So I think especially Beatrice is poised for this moment. So I say let her run, let her go, do it. I want more Beatrice and Eugenie for that matter. Okay, I have a bone to pick with Peter Phillips. Okay, I want to talk about this. Peter Phillips already has a new girlfriend, okay? And it's not
Rachel, you didn't even have a chance to shoot your
I
shot.
didn't I didn't even I it's not me. Spoiler alert. It's not me. And I can't believe this actually, like, for real. And so this is really none of our business, listeners, but you all know I have a gigantic crush on Peter. I saw him today. I mean, I wasn't at the garden party, but I saw
Okay,
pictures of
you
him
saw
today.
him today.
Well, he was at the garden party, and so I saw photos of him today. And he's anyway. You know how I feel. I feel like, I mean, he literally just broke up with Lindsay Wallace after 3 years together. I mean, and who knows actually when they broke up, but they just announced this. I think they announced this like what just a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
And so now he is apparently dating a nurse named Harriet Sperling. They went to the badminton horse trials together back on May 12th. He was also there with his daughters, Savannah and Isla, which indicate, I mean, they were like literally right there, all four of them together. Obviously, Harriet has apparently met them and met them enough to be going to public events with them since all of them were together. I mean, seriously, Peter and Lindsay just announced their breakup last month. Does this seem, again, this is not our business, but does this seem a little bit fast to you?
Um, you know, that's hard to say. It could be, but
We're
I
being so
don't.
diplomatic. It seems fast.
But see, I'm not sure. I'm not sure because they announced their breakup publicly recently, but I don't recall when we last saw them together in public. And
Yeah.
so I wonder how long it's actually been since they broke up. I sort of imagine, they waited a while to make the announcement because that seems to me like something you would do if you were a royal. You
Hmm.
would kind of wait things out and not, announce something prematurely. So it could be that it's been a while, and also, I mean, hey, he's what, 45, 46. He's, maybe he's ready to get serious and settle down again. So
Maybe,
I'm
but
not too bothered by
well,
it.
maybe I'm just a little salty, but I mean, he's living his life, but I don't know. Again, we don't know when Peter and Lindsay actually broke up, but what it looks like is that a 3-year relationship ended, and literally 3 weeks later, he's with another girlfriend with his kids, and that just anyway, none of our business. But Harriet looks perfectly nice, so just another woman that's not me dating Peter Phillips. But anyway, um,
Well,
I
while we're
digress.
on the Chelsea Flower Show discussion, we've mentioned it a few times. So it's actually currently going on this week. And I saw some posts on Instagram today. I know we've mentioned her before, but Laura Ann et al. That's pretty over on Instagram. She attended the flower show this week and she shared some really pretty photos and videos. And I wanted to talk about a few things I noticed from her Instagram pictures. So they had these like little, I guess like a shop or stand area with some items on display, and they had some souvenirs for sale. And it was actually the Highgrove Gardens shop, I think, that had a stand there. But they had some little willow sculptures of Queen Camilla's two dogs, Beth and Bluebell.
Hmm.
And she has the Jack Russell Terriers, so the sculptures, they were so cute. They looked like little dogs. They had floral handkerchiefs tied around their necks, and they had these little ceramic dog bowls with their names painted on them. It was a really, really cute display. I loved it. And then in the shop, they were also selling some items from King Charles Royal Highgrove Gardens. So some of the items I saw on the shelves were hand soaps, candles, coffee mugs, saw some jars of honey, teas, and of course, jars of royal jam. So there were also, Rachel, I had to put this in here for you. There was a table set up with several copies of Chris Jackson's book, Charles III, A King and His Queen. And we interviewed Chris
Hmm.
Jackson on the pod about that very book. So
We've
that was really
interviewed
fun to
Chris
see.
Jackson twice on the show, I think.
We
He's
have,
awesome.
yes. So I personally would love the opportunity to attend the Chelsea Flower Show someday. Right now I'm currently in my gardening era since my kitchen is still under construction. I can't get too creative in the kitchen, so I am growing various types of flowers in my backyard right
I
now.
love that. We actually have a tiny garden here at my house, and I want to get a bigger one, but I love the Chelsea Flower Show. It's still ongoing. I'm sure we'll talk about it again next week. Who knows? But I really liked the Bridgerton garden there. So I watched Bridgerton. Admittedly have not watched part one of season 3 yet. That's on the to-do list. But apparently, like I said earlier in the show, that the Queen, Camilla, is a fan of the show and she's already caught up. So she's ahead of me. But I want to, as we close the Royal Rundown today, and we do have actually, we have quite a bit in Royals around the world. I want to close today by sharing this sweet story. It could have gotten buried because it happened on May 8th, but I am not burying this story because I think it's so sweet. And sometimes we just need an uplift. So, again, we talked about this at the top of the show. I know there was a ton of drama surrounding the May 8th garden party, but this is a heartwarming story to emerge from it. So, sweet Tony Hudgel, he's 9 years old. He's a double amputee. He was invited to the garden party, but Tony and his mom, Paula, got stuck in a traffic jam for 2 hours. And because of this, they missed the garden party, which of course had to be so upsetting. Like, I would be upset about that at
Aw.
37, let alone at 9 years old. And so, after hearing about this, the royal family wrote, so Paula, Tony's mom, tweeted about it. And the royal family responded to Paula's tweet, fancy trying again another day. Like that makes me kind of like emotional because so obviously making sure that Tony and Paula could come to a garden party. I don't know if they were at today's garden party. I haven't heard, but they will be at a garden party later this summer. So sometimes, you know
Mhm.
what? Here's the lesson from that. Sometimes all we need is a second chance. I don't know why, Jessica, but that story kind of moved me to tears, especially in light of everything else going on with the family right now. So that is what I'm choosing to end the royal rundown on today.
I love it. That's a great way to end the royal rundown. So, um, we've got a little bit to talk about in royals around the world. So I guess
Yeah.
we should go ahead and jump into
Yeah,
that.
let's do it.
Well, first off, we are going to continue with our royal travel, but I
So
want to
much
wish
royal travel. Oh my God.
want to wish a happy belated birthday to TikTok's favorite prince, Prince Carl Philip of Sweden. He
My
turned
favorite prince
45
too.
on May 13th. So happy birthday.
Yes.
Also, really quick, happy Constitution Day to Norway. That was last week. I think it was Friday, May 17th, but they shared some photos of the celebrations with the royal family. And in their picture, they included their little fluffy puppy dog. And I was so happy they brought him along for the holiday. But those were really fun. I shared some over on Instagram if listeners wanted to go. Actually, it may have been on, I can't remember if it was on our stories or our feed. It might have been on our stories, but those were fun to see.
Hmm.
So go follow us on Instagram if you don't want to miss our
We're so
story.
close to 1,000 followers, by the way. Like we're like I have hold on, you keep going. I'm gonna check our follower count real quick, but hold on, you keep going.
Okay, so let's jump into royal travel. So last time we were together, we were talking about Denmark's visit to Sweden, and this time we're going to catch up on Denmark's visit to Norway.
Mm,
I love these joint Scandinavian royal events. I know I've said that before, but it's just clear that there are so many connections between these countries. You know, it's not just cultural similarities or long-standing diplomatic relationships. I think it's really obvious that these royals have true friendships and family ties, which they actually talked about during this trip. They highlighted a lot of ways their families are so closely related and some of the information they were putting out online. So here's a fun fact I will share. King Frederik of Denmark was the best man at Crown Prince Haakon and Crown Princess Mette-Marit's wedding. And
mm.
another fun fact, King Frederik is Princess Ingrid Alexandra's godfather. So one of the first photos we got following the arrival of Frederik and Mary was a photo of Frederik and Princess Ingrid Alexandra. So that was
I
really
like
nice.
that. By the way,
Yeah.
our follower count is 992. I just want to sneak that in there. So we're so close to 1,000. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's great. You know, that's her godfather and he came into town and made some time to see her and get a photo. So really appreciated seeing that. And then of course, the thing that we always talk about here, we had a fancy gala dinner. So one thing that first stuck out to me about this, I think you recall recently the Netherlands had their state banquet and Princess Katerina Amalia attended for the first time. That was her first state banquet. She's 20 years old. Well, Princess Ingrid Alexandra is also 20 years old. We did not see her at this dinner with Denmark. So I'm kind of wondering if we'll see her at an upcoming dinner. I don't know. We may keep our eyes out for that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead, Rachel, and share a spoiler here. We had, shocker, more ice blue at this event in our royal wardrobe.
Mm.
And it actually makes me really excited to see if it will be prevalent at other royal events throughout the summer. And it was Queen Mary. She was had this ice blue color. And a lot of fashion accounts online are reporting that this dress that she has on is a rewear of the dress that she wore to Prince Carl Philip and Princess Sophia's wedding in 2015. I don't have a picture of both versions here in our notes, Rachel, but they look very kind of different, honestly. And I think to me, it's pretty clear that only a keen eye would have picked up on the fact that it's a rewear.
Hmm.
I think any other person would have thought these were two completely different dresses. So it's definitely been altered quite a bit since 2015,
Hmm.
which is really interesting and a great way to get creative with fashion. Okay, so she was also in the Pearl Poire tiara, and this was her very first time wearing this tiara. It is one that Danish queens have worn for decades and decades and decades, including Queen Margrethe, of course. To me, if you zoom in on that tiara, it kind of reminds me of the Lover's Knot
No,
tiara.
that's what I was
Oh,
just about to say, Jessica. It looks like the Queen Mary Lover's Knot.
yeah. So what do you think about her look with this ice blue? She's got kind of a shawl around her shoulders. It's
Uh-huh.
sheer.
Well, first of all, Mary is but yet another royal woman to declare that ice blue is the color of the summer. It's a gorgeous color. It's absolutely gorgeous on Mary. I actually wrote a story this week about Princess Diana at the Cannes Film Festival back in as far back as 1987. And Diana wore this ice blue color to Cannes, and she wore kind of like a scarf situation. This isn't a scarf, it's a shawl around Mary. But I mean, ice blue has been a royal favorite for since forever, since 1987. Not saying that that's
Yeah.
forever because that's how old we are. But it's a gorgeous color. Mary looks absolutely fantastic, and that tiara really does look like the Lover's Knot tiara. It really does.
Okay, so let's talk about our other royals. So Crown Princess Mette-Marit was in an ivory colored, sort of like long sleeve top with it kind of had like a slight peplum feel around the waist. And she had that paired with a full length ivory skirt that was covered in this pink floral pattern. And she paired it with the Norwegian amethyst tiara. And then we also saw Queen Sonja in this orangey coral gown. It was like sheer layers of pleated flowing material. It had sort of a cape feature over her shoulders. It was very different. It was kind of unexpected, at least for me. I didn't expect to see her in something like this, but she had it paired with emerald jewels, and including her tiara, which was the emerald pearl tiara. And I have to ask you, Rachel, with all three of these, the ice blue, the ivory pink floral, and the coral, which is your favorite?
That's not a question. It's the ice blue Queen Mary. The other two did not really do it for me. It's just did not. We'll just leave it there. It's not even a question that it's Queen Mary on this one. What about you?
Yeah, so one thing I love about Queen Sonja is she does tend to go for bright colors, I feel like.
I do like the color on that dress. I just don't like the actual cut of the dress, really, but that's just me.
Yeah, we see her in just more kind of bold. I don't know. I feel like that's not unusual for her to pick a bold color. I just this dress was different to me. It was unexpected. I think, I agree with you. I think if you're going traditional, Mary looks beautiful. She looks very royal. It's very classic. I love it. Honestly though, if I were switching things up and wanting to feel a little spring, I am kind of loving Queen Sonia's dress. Now, I will say the color would not be flattering on me. I think the cape feature is really cool, and that flowy fabric just feels very springy to me. And
Mhm.
we're in May now, and I don't know, I'm kind of loving it. It's just different.
It's an unexpected color. I like the color. I'm not really into this cape and the way that the dress is at the bottom, but the color is really unexpected and gorgeous.
Okay, so let me share another fun fact about this trip. The night of the gala dinner also happened to be Frederik and Mary's 20th wedding anniversary. So
Mhm.
happy anniversary to them. And they've just had such a big year so far. I mean, celebrating 20 years of marriage plus becoming king and queen of Denmark. I mean,
Huge.
not many people can say they've done that in one year.
Yeah, well, and they've had some rumored difficulties as well, but we won't bring that back up. But regardless, it's been a gigantic year for them. So happy anniversary. That's a milestone anniversary. So that's huge.
Yes. And then speaking of anniversaries, we've got another one. So this Wednesday, May 22nd, which is the day this podcast goes live, is the 20th wedding anniversary of King Felipe and Queen Letizia of Spain. And they actually released several new portraits. I thought they were all great. And one thing that I loved about the portraits was they chose to include both of their daughters in the
Mm.
pictures with them. I didn't have all of them, but I did put one in here for you. They're kind of all in a line looking at the camera. But I just love that, 20 years of marriage is honestly, it's not just about the two of you.
Mhm.
They've created this family. And so I love that they included everyone.
I love that. That's a beautiful family. Happy is this is the season for weddings, and so happy anniversary to everybody. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we have some news out of Belgium as well. So Princess Elizabeth, who is the future heir to the throne, she's not the future heir to the throne. She is the heir to the throne. She's the future monarch. She is headed to Harvard. So the U.S. is about to become home to another European royal, at least for a couple of years, and an heir to the throne to boot. So Princess Elizabeth of Belgium is moving stateside to Cambridge to attend Harvard. She is 22. She is going to enroll in a master's program there this summer. This will, as we just said, be a 2 year program of study at Harvard's Kennedy School. And actually, coming to the US for her master's degree is a family tradition. So Elizabeth follows in the footsteps of her father, King Philippe, who got his master's degree in the US at Stanford in political science. So just add one more European royal to our roster of, let's see, we've got the UK, we've got Denmark, we've got Norway, we've got Sweden, and this isn't Europe, but we've got Japan. So we don't have a royal family here, so we just make a hodgepodge of everyone else's. So I'm really excited. I mean, obviously, Harvard is nothing to shake one's head at. Best, I would say, arguably the best university in the country. And so Elizabeth is beautiful. She's brilliant, and Belgium is lucky to have her as the heir to the throne. So one more royal coming our way.
Welcome over. Hopefully, she
Welcome to
loves
the
her time here.
US.
Well, let's close out the podcast with a really exciting news story that we've all been waiting for. We have a royal baby announcement.
Yay.
And that's another, if you're following us on Instagram, you would have already known about this. I did share it over there right when we got the announcement. So, Princess Alexandra of Luxembourg and Nicholas Baggery, her husband, welcomed their first child on May 14th. It is a baby girl named Victoire. And this royal baby is ninth in line to the throne. She's also the eighth grandchild of the Grand Duke and Grand Duchess. In the announcement that was shared online, they did say that mother and baby were both doing well. So congratulations to the Luxembourg royal family.
Congratulations. So much, a lot of tough stuff happening, but a lot of good too.
Absolutely. Well, Rachel, it's been a full episode. I think we covered just about everything.
I think we've had a lot to cover these past 2 weeks, and we tried to cover it as succinctly as we could. So thanks for hanging with us, listeners.
Definitely. And as always, please let us know your thoughts. If there's anything that we talked about today that you have thoughts on or questions, you can reach out to us. We are on Instagram at Podcast Royal. You can send us a DM over there, or if you want to send us an email, you can find us at hellopodcastroyal@gmail.com. And as always, thank you so much for tuning into episode 141 of Podcast Royal. Bye.
Bye.